When you make multiple in-depth recaps about a series, you tend to start seeing things that you didn't before. That's the case with the darling horror series Everything is Fine, a series where everything obviously isn't fine. Mysteries upon mysteries have layered themselves on top of each other, and theories have to be made for some semblance of an answer. But I have a theory. Okay! Shut up. That would completely upend everything we thought we knew about this series. Ready to have your mind blown? Everything is not fine, as Everything is Fine has returned onto Webtoon a couple weeks back. Everything is Fine is actually one of the few horror series that I'm really into. It's basically the equivalent of mascot horror. Freddy Fazbear eats your heart out. The premise is pretty simple. The government has been replaced by the new government. Real creative there, guys. Forcing people to wear these massive cat heads and pretend that everything is fine. Hence the title of the series. We've gone through 2 seasons of Everything is Fine, and I have 2 different recaps if you're interested in that. But as a quick recap, season 1 was watching our main characters, Sam and Maggie Wilkerson, figuring out that they need to play the game to get ahead. Things like setting up a Faraday cage to block out signals, or snitching out your neighbors who might be disloyal. Season 1 was figuring out the game, how to play, how to succeed, how to win. Season 2 is now playing the game in the next tier of competition. Everyone there has sold someone out, has doomed someone to banishment, and is ready and willing to do it again. Now, for those unaware, you might question why. Why are there so many people ready and willing to do this? And the answer is pretty simple, as it appears all the way back in episode 2 of the entire series. When Maggie is sitting alone, she stares at an empty playground. That raises the question, where are the kids? We get confirmation in this in episode 5. During a dinner party, Maggie's acting a little weird, and Sam has to pull her aside to tell her, "But I need you to do this. Please just keep going. I'm begging you." For her. For her, huh? That's right, viewers, we got some kids in trouble. The new government, whoever those uncreative people are, managed to swipe most of the children to keep their parents hostage. People are forced to play along or get red status, being banished from society, but more importantly, being forced to watch as your children meet a terrible fate. This is the game that everyone is playing. Getting ahead of your neighbors means your child's safety, but it also means your neighbor will lose their child and perhaps even their life. Which is exactly what happens at the end of season 1, to get Sam and Maggie into Lakeview, the next tier of society. Season 2 is said Lakeview, and the turmoil of watching neighbors who have basically doomed other people's kids to get ahead, ready to do it again to get even further ahead. And this is all stuff that's really easy to pick up on if you just do a straight read through of the series. It's laid out fairly well, and there's even some stuff I skipped over, like the rebellion and things like that. But there are always questions and of course theories to make. Let's talk about something I called out in my last video. We also get a flashback of just text, thanks Mike, that their kid shows them. Let me explain that their kid talking to their parents chose to leave them and go with a them. I guess Mike heard my cries, because at the start of season 3 we get this exact flashback where everything starts to go downhill. We start with a news broadcast confirming that this new government has not only shot down Air Force One, which is a wild thing that we'll get back to, but also that the president has been killed and they're enforcing their new status quo onto the world. But there's some stuff that you might have missed. Being a news broadcast, there's a scrolling banner of news at the bottom of the screen, going through a couple of different topics, including UN Emergency Council meeting postponed, Japan PM seen exiting Kremlin, International Space Station still not responding, China rejects air travel ban, and most interestingly, over 30% of children reported missing in 121 countries. Now there are over 190 countries in the world, so that's more than half of them. And that's not including the ones that aren't reported missing. But we'll get back to that. This broadcast gives us a lot of information, but I also think some red herrings. First of all, just to get this out of the way, I don't see it being aliens. I'm sorry. I don't think this new government was aliens. Yes, the technology is weirdly a little advanced, but it's also not advanced enough. For example, the GPS signals. They were telling me that an alien has dead spots in GPS signals, also that they can only pin a location every like 10 minutes. That seems not advanced at all. But we also get 3 direct on-Earth options in this broadcast. First, Japan PM seen exiting Kremlin. PM for Prime Minister, and Kremlin is a fortified structure in the center of Moscow, so Russia. We also get China rejects air travel ban. So our three suspects for world domination are Japan, Russia, or China. I'm going to immediately eliminate China because they rejected an air travel ban, a ban that the new government likely put in place. We really have nothing on Russia, so it's hard to pin it on them, but it's actually with Japan where things start to get interesting. Do I think Japan took over the world? No, not really. Honestly, pinning out one of these three is very unlikely, since we see that immediately after the takeover took place, there were already people positioned to take over important utilities, meaning it was an inside job. But this small call out to Japan ties back to two really weird moments in the series. All the way back in episode 2, where Maggie goes shopping, one of the cans of tuna is written in Japanese. Like randomly. This goes nowhere. It means nothing. But maybe this could be a sign of something. Another interesting detail is Setsuko, or however you pronounce it. Season 2 starts with a flashback to when Sam and Maggie meet for the second time, where Maggie explains that she wants to open a restaurant and name it after her mom, naming it Setsuko. Two weird, interesting calls to Japan more than anything else. There's three ways I could see this going. 1. Red herring, obviously. Could mean nothing, it could just be a fun little Easter egg. 2. Japan maybe is the mastermind here, and the tuna can thing was a mistake from them trying to add a new English label and they just forgot to or missed it, so it originated from Japan, or actually maybe it's the opposite. Japan is sending out clues to help gather people together. Maybe in a rebellion. It's kinda hard to say. But I wouldn't be surprised if Japan turns out to be more important than we first thought. But this actually brings us to my second theory, and one that I'm way more excited about. You see, the flashback we got in season 2 was Sam and Maggie's kids, Sarah, calling her parents, telling them not to look for her, and that she felt so lucky that she was your daughter. Season 3, we get that full conversation. Now, even though I called it out last time as Sarah choosing the government over her family, I was still kind of holding out hope that it was like the opposite of the parent situation. Like the government was telling the children that they're gonna do the same thing to their parents that they told their parents would do to their kids, i.e. they would murder them. The rest of this conversation has put a wrinkle in that idea with just one phrase. My new friends. If this was a play along so your parents don't die, you know, that classic scenario, then Sarah surely wouldn't have referred to them as my new friends. Even a simple they would have been kind of weird considering the rest of the sentence. My new friends see what's wrong with the world, and we're gonna do what we need to fix it. This entire sentence makes it seem that Sarah agrees with this new government and what they're planning, enough to abandon her family to support this cause. This is kind of the opposite of what we all thought in season 1. We thought somehow, some way, this government of people kidnapped a large majority of the population's children, either by actively kidnapping them or by tricking parents with some type of like childcare system or schooling thing, and then force their parents to comply. And while that last part still seems very possible, the children seem to be there willingly. What else was interesting was that last news topic, the one I talked about before, over 30% of children missing in 121 countries. Not only is this happening all around the world, but these children are reported missing. It's likely that number is higher. It didn't really seem like Sam and Maggie thought their child was missing. The conversation here makes it seem like they're relieved she's alive, not that she's turned up after being missing for a long period of time. Giving credit to the whole parents gave them up willingly because they thought it was a childcare program theory. And the 30% are the ones they were just able to nab. But that brings us to an interesting question: red status. Red status is the threat that keeps all the adults in line, not only keeping them alive in society, but keeping their kids alive in society. But that itself is an interesting question. Why red status? I'm not questioning why it exists, to keep the adults in line, I just brought that up, but there are two parts to red statusing: banishment and having your children meet a terrible fate. But why that last part? Why kill the kids? Let's say 30% of the children were kidnapped. Let's say another 20% weren't kidnapped or just didn't join previously, but that leaves around 50% of the kids that did join somehow. And even if these numbers are wildly wrong, the TV broadcast explains that if you are not a parent or your child has opted out of our cause or you simply refuse to comply upon the arrival of the item, please remain in place and await processing, likely meaning that kids who didn't reply were killed. So you have a group of children who complied, see you as their new friend, and seemingly agree with your new world order enough to abandon their previous family. Why would you kill them if their parents stepped out of line? Why would you get rid of the future generation you handcrafted to follow you without question? In short, you wouldn't. That's right, I believe that red status is a lie. The whole banishment part, sure, that checks out, but the kids dying? I don't think so. It doesn't make sense. You raise their children, you indoctrinate them into believing your way of thinking, but the moment their parents step out of line is when you get rid of them? I don't think so. For a group of people who shot down Air Force One, killed the president, did a clean sweep of the entire government, and already had replacements to cover important utilities in place, it would be wildly too dumb to get rid of the kids. And that is the big twist. I don't think any of these kids have actually died. Now, does that mean there's no stakes? I don't think so. Instead, I think it might add even more drama to everything. Imagine, if you would, the rebellion getting to the head of the operation, ready to take them out and save the world, only for their kids. Maggie's, Judy's, everyone else in the rebellion. All their kids that they thought were dead to be waiting for them, that they could be a family again. Only if they put down their weapons and walked away. Imagine the drama of the scene, and imagine the anger that everyone else would feel if they played by every single rule. They got people banished because they thought their child's safety was the most important thing, but their child would always have been safe. But will I be right? Will I be wrong? Who's to say? Mike sure isn't answering any of my questions. But to see the inevitable downfall of my mentality, make sure you check out Everything Is Fine, updating every week on Webtoon.